Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 2024 F1 Testing Day 2 debrief show here on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. I'm Chris Cato, once again, here to recap all of the day's events and summarize everything that you need to know in case you missed the action. So let's dive right into the Day 2 running at the Bahrain International Circuit. A lot of laps completed, but it wasn't the most straightforward for the drivers, but more so also for the track organizers as well. We're going to get into that in just a second. Let's look at the lap leaderboard for the day. Carlos Sainz setting the fastest day of today, but also of all of testing so far with the 129.9. That was set on the C4 tire, which is actually a step softer than what we're going to have available next weekend for the race in Bahrain. So just keep that in mind. 7/10 behind Sergio Perez, P2, making his debut in the RB20 today. He set a 130.6. Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes also making his season debut. 131.0 for him, 1.1 seconds off the pace. Lando Norris in the McLaren finished P4. Daniel Ricciardo in the RB, top 5 finish for him with a 131.3, 1.4 seconds off the pace. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari he was driving in the morning managed a 131.7, followed by Lance Stroll in 7th place. Esteban Ocon in the Alpine in 8th. Valtteri Bottas for Stake Sauber, finishing P9 with a 132.2, and then rounding out the top 10, you had Oscar Piastri, a 132.3 he was driving in the morning session. So now let's go into the driver lap counts for the day and also for the teams to see how many laps were completed and who completed the most amount of laps. So we're topping the timesheets and also topping the lap count sheets. You have Ferrari, 138 laps completed today. Sauber had 135, followed by Red Bull, 129. That was solely done by Sergio Perez, however. He was the only Red Bull driver today. 128 laps for RB, 127 for Aston Martin, 124 for Haas. Mercedes, with Lewis Hamilton only driving today, 123. Williams, with only Logan Sargent driving today, at 117. Alpine with 111, and the 10th fewest and the least amount of laps completed on day 2 of testing goes to McLaren. Only 87 laps completed for them. We're going to get to that, the reason why, in just a second, but let's take a look quickly at the speed trap times here. So just to give you guys an idea that we're really not seeing a lot of performance runs still on day 2 of testing. You had the fastest speed trap going to Kevin Magnussen, 321 kilometers an hour. For example, Sergio Perez, who finished P3, managed 319 kilometers an hour. And as you go further down here on the order, you can kind of see the drivers who are really not using high engine modes or even using DRS. You had Leclerc, 313 kilometers an hour, and Carlos Sainz, who set the fastest time of the day, only 313 kilometers an hour for him. But most of these teams really are using low engine modes during testing, so they're not really showing their full speed. So on day 2 of testing, we had quite a few cars doing longer runs, and as you can see there on the left-hand side of your screen, the tires that were used by some of these drivers, most of them are using only those harder compound tires, in particular the C3, which is actually going to be the qualifying tire next week in Bahrain, but a lot of drivers using the C1, the C2, really going for longer runs and race runs, trying to get the car dialed in for the race setups. Hopefully tomorrow we're going to get some more performance runs on that C3 tire, but really only Williams and Ferrari using that C4 soft tire, and not every team actually brought that tire to this test. And the test today started a little bit rough for Sergio Perez in the RB20. It was his first day in the car, and his AM session was hampered a little bit by a brake issue. His brake actually caught fire when he was out there in the garage, and they had to sort out the issue. Luckily, it wasn't a critical problem, and he was able to get onto the track, but his issues didn't stop there. He actually had another problem in the PM session. It was some sort of an electronics issue that really almost made him stop on the track. He lost some sort of electronic issue around turn 13 of the track, and he had to limp home all the way into the pit lane. Luckily, he made it there, and it was a quick fix because he was out on the track once again in about 10 minutes' time. But just a couple of technical gremlins there for Red Bull today. Wasn't as smooth as it was for them with Max Verstappen the day before. But all in all, Checo still getting in a healthy amount of laps like we saw before. 129 on the board for him. Just sticking on Red Bull before we move on. We talked a lot about the RB20 innovations yesterday, but we saw this really interesting piece here from F1 TV where they further did a look at the innovations on the RB20. And if you just look at the rear, the bodywork on this car, especially as we go toward the engine cover, looking very similar to the F175, Ferrari's 2022 Challenger, if you remember the kind of bathtub design that they had. So Red Bull taking a little bit of inspiration from them and applying it much to a smaller degree, but nonetheless a little bit of a Ferrari inspiration there. But you could just see some of the detail of the cooling, and it just looks absolutely spectacular here. We're going to wrap up the show just talking about what some of the experts in the pit lane are thinking of how far ahead Red Bull is so far in 2024. And as we see here, all the cars out on track again today once again. Let me know in the comments which livery is your favorite, which cars stand out the most to you so far. We had a really good look at them today with another 8 hours of running. One of the teams that struggled to get a little bit more running on today, though, was Williams. They had some technical issues yesterday with Alex Albon, and it continued today with Logan Sargent, who ran about 30 laps in the AM session before he had a brake-by-wire issue that kept him in the garage for most of the back half of the AM session. But luckily, he was able to continue in the PM and still did a solid amount of laps, 117 for Williams. So Williams still figuring out their car. They've figured out some of the issues they had in 2023, but Alex Albon in commentary saying today that they discovered some new problems with it. So still a lot of learning for them to do, because it is practically almost a new car for them. Now, the biggest reliability issue of the day came from the actual track and not from the cars or the drivers. We had our first red flag of testing, and it came from a drain cover at the exit of the turn 11 curb. And this was after Charles Leclerc, a number of drivers had ran over it, but Charles Leclerc really dislodged it, and that caused the red flag to come out because of debris. But it actually ended up damaging the floor of the SF24, because Ferrari did confirm afterwards that they had to take the floor off and indeed make changes to the floor because it was damaged. It certainly wasn't as bad as Carlos Sainz's floor in Las Vegas, but nonetheless, it's pretty crazy that once again, it's Ferrari that had the drain cover issue and that they had to make repairs to the car. But Leclerc was able to get out for about an hour in the PM session, because afterwards, they had totally scrapped the end of the AM session. This happened with about an hour and 45 minutes to go in the morning session, but with too much repair work needed to be done, they did not restart the session. But Leclerc luckily did get another hour of running before handing off the car to Carlos Sainz in the PM. Now, as we get into the PM session, we had a little bit more issues, but this time on the McLaren side of things. The MCL38 had spent some time in the garage, Lando Norris driving in the afternoon, and they were working on some kind of issue near the engine. The cover was off, and the mechanics were working all on the car there, and Chris Medlin reporting from the pit lane that it was a small fuel system issue that kept Norris in the garage for a while in the afternoon, and luckily they did get him back out onto the track eventually. And as you see, he ended up setting a pretty decent time there with a 1:31.2, good enough for fourth on the day. But he only completed 48 laps himself, and McLaren only managing to do 83 laps on the day. So not a great day for McLaren. They've shown some pretty decent speed, certainly a huge step forward compared to this time last year, but still a couple of little technical mechanical problems hampering them. So let's see what they can do tomorrow on the final day of winter testing. But as we got into the final 10 minutes of day 2 action, we actually got a little bit of a race on our hands, as after the safety car procedures and red flag procedures, the cars went out on track again, and we got a little bit of a racing down the front stretch here between the likes of Sauber and Mercedes and McLaren and even Sergio Perez in the back. But Kevin Magnussen on the far right of the screen there, as you can see, really wasn't that much interested in it, but we got to see a little bit of a preview of what we're going to see next Saturday at the Bahrain Grand Prix, the first race of the season. So that was a little bit interesting to see at the end of the day. Now let's talk a little bit about Mercedes here. Lewis Hamilton making his debut in the W15, his final test with Mercedes in his career. But him and Russell are saying that they can now attack medium and high-speed corners with the new W15 car. And you got to say, just by looking at the W15 on track, it was a little bit rough in the hands of Hamilton earlier on in the day, had quite a few lockups and had a few oversteer moments, losing the rear of the car. But toward the end of the day, he seemed really dialed in, especially when he went out on his C3 tire run that gave him the best lap time of a 1:31.0. and he completed 122 laps on the day. Lewis Hamilton only doing harder compound tires runs, mainly the C3 and the C2 as well, so he didn't run any soft tires. But the W15 does look much better than it did this time last year, so good news if you're a Mercedes fan. They were trialing some different rear wing setups. As you can see, the top side of your screen there, Mercedes is day 1 p.m. rear wing, and then on the bottom half is the day 2 a.m. rear wing, which is a little bit thicker there, so probably added downforce. They were probably testing high load and low load rear wings for their race setup. So Mercedes trying with a few different things here. So let's get into the talk in the pit lane about car performance and where the teams think each other are going to be. This is according to Amos, which is the German publication. Journalist Michael Schmidt said that at the moment, people in the paddock believe that Ferrari is the second fastest car behind Red Bull. And how far do some teams think Red Bull is? Well, Michael Schmidt continues here as he was speaking with Sky Germany to say most people in the paddock think that Red Bull is ahead, Mercedes engineers say they are 1 second ahead, and Williams engineers believe it's around 0.5 tenths of a second. So how true is that? We're going to have to wait and see for a week there, but I think it's clear to all of us that Red Bull is the fastest car at the moment and that they are going to be the team to beat. How big the gap is going to be, we'll have to see. But the rumor already is that the RB20 around the third or fourth race of the season is expected to bring some pretty big upgrades as well. So it should be interesting to see just how far ahead Red Bull are and how close these other teams can get this season. With that being said, let's end on some good news here, though, that despite not seeing a lot of performance runs so far in testing, we have seen some very quick lap times compared to last year because 3 teams have already gone quicker than in 2023 qualifying. We've had 3 teams. McLaren are 4 tenths faster than they were at this time last year. Ferrari are 0.8 tenths of a second faster than in 2023. And VCarb RB are 0.04 tenths faster than they were in 2023. So 3 teams already surpassing their 2023 qualifying, and we haven't even really seen very many performance runs. So we should expect lap times to tumble in 2024 if that is any indication of what is to come. So that will about do it for your wrap-up show for day 2 of preseason testing here on the Backmarkers F1 Show channel. We will be back wrapping up day 3 and all of testing events, so we hope you can join us at that time too. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. Head down there, enable notifications, and make sure all notifications are clicked so you never miss when we post any content from 2024 testing, but also for the rest of the season as well. I've been your host, Chris Cato. I really appreciate you joining me here as well. Jump down in the comments below and let me know what caught your eye on day 2 and where do you think the pecking order is going to end up with what you've seen so far with second day of cars out on track. Thanks very much for watching. I appreciate the support. I hope you could join me again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, it's bye for now.